I'm Jonathan Downey, and I guess I've never actually told anyone how I got into this strange and bizarre profession, so I'm Dr. Jonathan Downey, this is Inside Interpreting, and this is how I got into interpreting. I'm going to make this video a little bit longer because there are parts of the story that are worth dwelling on because they might apply to anyone watching this. So my story begins with a visit to a youth event, a Christian youth event in Offenburg in Germany. I'm sorry, I massively mispronounced that. My German still hasn't gotten any better, really. I've got a few words, but not much. So I get the bus from Glasgow. I didn't know anyone at all on this trip. I kind of met someone a couple of days before and we started chatting on the bus and we did the typical thing of, you know, spray painting our hair blue and stuff. And we arrive in Germany and I'm feeling, it's my first trip abroad, I'm feeling massively homesick. While I was there, my grandmother passed away, so that added to it as well. But actually, my abiding memory of that trip is sitting in this, what seemed to me huge auditorium. It probably only held like 200, 300 people at the time. And I looked on stage and there was a speaker, and at either end of the stage, there were these two people with their own mics. One was speaking, I think, French maybe, and the other one was speaking English. And then at other times during the conference, the interpreters would change. So if there was an English speaker, you'd have a French person at one side and a German person at the other. And as someone who spoke a little bit of French, less than I thought I actually spoke, but I thought I was quite fluent at the time, I was mesmerised by these two people on the stage, how they could take what someone was saying and seemingly without any prep at all, I still don't know now if they had any preparation, turn it into another language. And it sounded flawless, it sounded amazing. And at that moment, I looked at them, I thought, I kind of like French, that's what I want to do. Years passed, I always wanted to say that. I started my undergraduate degree in English and French literature, which taught me basically that I don't like French literature. Sorry to any lovers of French literature watching this. But I did my English and French literature degree, and during my first degree, I really wanted to work as a translator because I knew what a translator was. I hadn't really heard the word interpreter, but all of the translation courses were either non-existent or the person who was going to do them was on leave of some sort, so I couldn't do them. Well, as part of that degree, I had to go to France for 7 months, which is great, so I go to Dunkirk in France. And by then, you know, after 3 years of studying, my French had gotten a bit better. And while I'm in Dunkirk, in fact, just the summer just before I went, I was at a conference in Brighton, and the people in Dunkirk kind of knew me because I talked to them and they asked me to interpret for someone who was sharing how he came to know Jesus, and he was sharing it in the city centre of Brighton. So here was I interpreting for like 5-10 minutes in Brighton city centre, surrounded by 200 young people, not having a clue what I was doing, but enjoying it anyway. And then I got the chance a few months later, when I was in Dunkirk for 7 months, to interpret at the French version of that same conference. And lots of things happened, you know, they had a giveaway and everyone rushed on stage and I got knocked over and I got a couple of things hilariously wrong, like mistaking croissants and croyants. Not something that an interpreter wants to get wrong, but I loved it. I did all of the French to English for that conference and I absolutely loved it. I still have the CDs of that conference somewhere at home. I did some research based on them once, which wasn't nearly as good as I thought it was, but you know, from that moment on, I wanted to interpret, but while I was in France, I spotted a flaw in my plan. You see, I'd been told that interpreters needed 2 foreign languages, not just 1, and so I'd almost given up on the dream. I'd almost thought, you know, what am I going to do because I can't do what I want to do, so I'm stuck. Well, while I'm in France, somehow I get a hold of a brochure for Heriot-Watt University, and at that point, I don't know if they still do it now, someone can tell me, they were doing a degree where you could actually interpret in both directions between your first language and your foreign language, or between English and another language. And so while I was in France, I thought, that's incredible, and I think I actually applied while I was in France, or at least I filled in the paperwork. And the deal was that so long as I finished my honours, they would take me and, well, they would at least allow me to sit the exam. So I'll go back and do my honours. I kind of in a strange place because when I did my honours, I was engaged and At the end of my honours year, I got married, so I'm not sure how much I concentrated on my studies during my honours year. I think I was spending far too much time with my fiancée and not enough time in the books. But I still got a decent enough grade. I got like a 2-1. And so I ended up starting this degree in translation and conference interpreting. Didn't even know the difference between conference interpreting and any other form of interpreting at that point. And actually now I'm still doubtful about some of the differences, but that's a whole other video. So I did that degree at Heriot-Watt, and the strange thing was that they were really concentrating at that time on getting people ready to interpret in the EU and in the big international organisations. And even now that kind of doesn't attract me that much, because it always seemed a little bit too divorced from what affects ordinary people. Now I've probably got that completely wrong, but the interpreting that I learned to do in church got me passionate about interpreting because I'd seen, and I make no apologies for this, I'd seen how God uses interpreting to change lives. And my passion for interpreting was as much born out of the second chapter of Acts in the Bible and my passion for people hearing about Jesus and following Jesus as it was about anything else. And so spending hours in the classroom interpreting reports to UNESCO or discussions of the EU or stuff like that never really attracted me. And when I left Heriot-Watt, I decided that the only people I wanted to work for really were churches and Christian organisations, because I was so passionate, and I still am passionate, about people hearing the gospel. And so I wrote to several Christian ministries thinking, these guys are international, they'll definitely want interpreters, if we have to move, we have to move. I'm going to work for them. And every single one wrote back, and I want to thank them all for writing back. But they all wrote back saying, nah, it's kind of not how it works. And so I got really disappointed, even more so with the fact that for the first kind of 2 years after graduation, while it was easy enough to get translation work, which I kind of enjoyed because of the money and because of the novelty, but was never really me, I never got interpreting work for that first 2 years. And about 2 years into my career, when nothing in interpreting seemed to be working, I had applied for agencies and nothing happened. And suddenly I got a call from one called Global Languages from their managing director. I think it was actually Frances from Global Languages who phoned me, and she said, Laura Ward from your year at uni says you're a good interpreter. Would you like to come and interpret an event? And Laura, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for that opportunity. So I went to that event and I had many panic attacks in the booth. I think I was absolutely rubbish. I'm surprised that anyone wanted to work with me again. But that was my first day of interpreting. It was a shock as to the difference between, interpreting in the lab and interpreting at a real life event. I'm sure every interpreter's gone through that. No matter how much you go through, I had interpreted volunteer at the European Social Forum. No matter how much of that you do, it doesn't prepare you for, that was like a management meeting for a large international association. You're never prepared for that. And thankfully, I now don't panic in the booth anymore, and I know the skills to get through it, and I know how to deal with it. But that was my very first interpreting assignment, and it was months again before I got another, but someone believed in me, someone gave me a chance, someone trusted me. And to this day, I really love commercial work. Association work is kind of fun. Works councils, the pay has to be right, but I love commercial work where I'm seeing lives changed. One of my most recent jobs was working again for a church who were talking about their institutional policy about migration and what they're going to do on the front lines. That kind of work really appeals to me. The work where you see, someone won a contract, or people like this product more, or especially lives were changed because of this. That's the interpreting I love. And it's the interpreting that I spend my time trying to get, targeting companies that I can help grow, that I can help them hire more people and make a difference to people's lives, targeting organisations that I know have a need of interpreting and can't always get it locally. That's how I got into interpreting, and I make no apologies for the fact that my Christianity is at the heart of my interpreting. And now increasingly my interpreting is at the heart of my Christianity and how I understand God and how I understand the Bible. That's how I got into interpreting. I hope my story inspires people. There's been whole roadblocks through. I might tell you about some of the roadblocks and some of the problems that you come when you're an interpreter, especially here in Scotland. But I just thought it would be a good idea to share my story for people to learn a bit more about me and my background. I'm Jonathan Downey, and this was Inside Interpreting.